Welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly. My guest is Amanda Skenandore and Keri Dedeo, correct? Dedeo, okay. The topic of today's show is all about traditionally signed authors. And my first guest is Keri Dedeo. And Keri was born in Flagstaff, Arizona. She moved throughout much of her life, spending each year of high school in a different location, like Arizona, Sweden, which I want to ask you about that, and Nebraska. She earned her BA from the University of Arizona and her MA from the University of Wyoming. No matter where she traveled, she always found her way back to Arizona. She is the owner of Witty Owl Consulting and works as a freelance writer, editor, researcher, and instructional designer. Keri spends her free time with her husband, Matt, kayaking, hiking, and walking her two beautiful dogs, Maya and, is it Layla?
Lila.
Yeah, Layla.
Lila.
Or Lila, okay. Currently, yeah. Keri is the author of Nothing But a Song and lives in northern Arizona, where she plays viola in local symphonies. She loves technology and finding innovational tools for a happy and healthy life. So, Keri, did I leave anything out?
No, you did a pretty good job. That was great.
All right, great. So tell us a little bit about Nothing But a Song.
So Nothing But a Song, it's an inspirational, clean romance novel about a girl who loses her hearing, and she is a musician. Her dream has always been to be a big singer, and of course, losing her hearing, she thinks that this dream can no longer come true, and she has to find a way to fight through that.
Oh, is that based on someone?
It is not. It was based on a conversation that I had when I was a teenager, and I actually wrote it when I was 14. And my friends and I were sitting around talking about, would it be worse to be deaf or would it be worse to be blind? And as a musician myself, I couldn't imagine life being deaf, And so I thought, well, what would that look like? And if I did have to go deaf, what would I do? And this book came out of that conversation, and I wrote it when I was 14 and revised it in 2016 and got it published.
I'm just curious, why so long?
I was scared. I was a chicken. So one reason is in my book, there was a lot of technology. I had invented this handheld device that you could speak into, and it would tell you whether you were singing in tune or not, or saying something in tune. And at the time, nothing like that existed.
Okay.
And now it exists. We have a ton of apps on your phone, a tuner app that you can get and put it on your phone, and it'll tell you whether you're in tune or not.
Wow. All right. Do you have any other books in the works?
I do. I am working on a sequel to Nothing But a Song, and I'm also working on a novel. I have a 3-novel series that I'm working on. I don't have a title for that yet, but it'll be a young adult adventure romance novel. And then I have a memoir that I've been working on.
Where can we find your book?
My book, Nothing But a Song, is available on Amazon. We're in the process of working on the ebook now, so the ebook should be out in the fall. But right now it's available on paperback on Amazon.
And you are traditionally published?
Yes, I am.
I am. We're going to go into that in a few minutes, but first I'm going to introduce Amanda Skenandore, and she's the author of Between Earth and Sky. And Amanda comes from a family of diehard scientists, the kind who tell jokes about
irrational
there we go,
numbers.
irrational numbers and the use of Vulcan salute instead of waving goodbye. She has 2 sisters. One is a conversational biologist, and the other conservation biologist, and the other is an astrophysicist. You'd think I would read this. I wrote this. Her father is a physicist and a movie buff, and her mother is a mathematician who dabbles in everything from theater to stained glass. Amanda is an infection prevention nurse, but first and foremost a writer. She says that even when her pen is still, her mind is flight with stories. So you're always thinking of new stories.
Yes, always daydreaming.
Okay. There you go. That's good. When she told her husband at 30 that she wanted to quit her job and try to be an author, he said, go for it. After 5 years without selling a book or finding an agent, he said, try a little longer. And luck was on her side, and she finally found an agent and sold her book to Kensington Publishing. Amanda and her husband live in Las Vegas, Nevada, with their pet turtle, Lenore. Lenore's still around?
She is, yep.
Okay, great. All right, and Amanda's been on the show before. I know you're also a grant writer.
Yes, for about 3 years, I was the grant writer for the Henderson Writers Group.
Okay, all right. So tell us about your book.
My book, Between Earth and Sky, follows the story of Alma. Her father ran an Indian boarding school in the late 1800s, and she goes to this school with these Native American children and becomes their friend. The whole idea of these schools, and it's a historical fiction book, so it's based on true history, was to assimilate the Native Americans into white society, and the book follows her story, but is really revealing the damage that these schools did for the Native American children that went there and how it really robbed them of their culture and their sense of identity and left them sort of straddling two worlds, the white world and their Native American world, and not fitting in really in either.
And you did a lot of research on this.
Yes.
Yeah, because you would have to, I would assume.
Absolutely. Lots of, I read memoirs, I read other nonfiction books, visited some of these places, museums, spoke with people in the various tribes that are discussed in the book. But I love history and I love research, so that was a fun part for me.
And it really is a beautiful book. You know, I went
you.
to your book launching. She had a very successful book launching. You know, so that's great. And you at one time were thinking about self-publishing, I think, or I know you waited a year before you put that out after.
Yeah, I had, I was never necessarily opposed to the idea of self-publishing or indie publishing, but I definitely wanted to try the traditional publishing route first.
Because on the first time you were on the show, you didn't have Kensington, I don't think.
I think the book was not out by then.
Yeah.
I think I had signed with them, but the book wasn't out.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. And where can we find your book?
The book is available everywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, your local bookstore, and your local library.
And both of you have personal websites. Amanda, why don't you tell us your website?
Yes, it's just my name, amandaskenandore.com. AMANDASKENANDORE.
Okay. And Keri, what is your personal website?
It's keridedeo.com, so KERIDEDEO.com.
All right. And our topic for today's show is traditionally signed authors, or all about traditionally signed authors. And there's a lot of difference between, well, no, actually there's not. There's both similarities and a little bit of difference between traditionally published authors today and self-published, because there's different degrees of traditionally published authors. I mean, you can go with Simon Schuster, that's one. McGraw-Hill, Kensington. I'm going to talk a little bit about Kensington Publishing in a few minutes. I didn't realize how long they'd been around, actually. So, actually, let me just read that, and then we can start talking about it. It was founded in 1974. Kensington Publishing Corporation is located in New York City and is known as America's independent publisher. It remains a multi-generational family business. In 2014, it marked Kensington Publishing Corporation's 40th year in business and is the last remaining independent U.S. publisher of hardcover, trade, and mass market paperback books. So that's pretty interesting, you know.
Yeah, it's there's been so much consolidation in the last, 20 or so years that you really only have the big five that we talk about.
Right.
But you do have a couple of larger independent books, book publishing companies like Kensington, Source Books, and then, that are sort of, you might call like mid-size
Yeah,
publishers.
Usually someone like Kensington would have been picked up by a big company. They must have decided they don't want to be picked up. Yeah.
We are, I should say, the books from Kensington are distributed through Penguin Random House, but everything else is all done in-house, and they, have complete sort of control over their authors the books that they put out.
Yeah. And I know, Keri, you were published through Crystal Publishing, LLC, and it's a smaller independent publishing house, and it's located in Fort Collins, Colorado. It's owned by Patricia Landy. Their mission is to provide publishing opportunities for new and experienced authors. Their services include cover design, illustration, editing, layout, and wrap, as well as printing and production, of course, with the ISBNs and Library of Congress registration. And let's see, their clientele is global and offer translation services in major international languages. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So
you covered it.
Yeah, and so there's already a little difference here in that, now how long has Crystal Publishing been around? I think they've been around for what, 8 years or so?
Yeah, 8 years. Actually, yeah, it has been 8 years. That's really, I can't believe that.
Yeah,
I thought it was shorter than that, but you're right, it's 8 years. And so it is a pretty small company. And they actually, so how I got my book published through them was through a pitch over the phone with the publisher. And I've been working on the editorial board with them, and so that's kind of how I knew that what they were looking for, and then did a pitch.
Okay.
That way. So I don't have an agent. So that's one difference between me and Amanda as well.
And Amanda, how did you pitch your book to Kensington?
My agent pitched the book to Kensington, although Kensington does take unsolicited queries, pitches. Unlike most, I don't think any of the big five do. So you can query Kensington without an agent. I do think it helped get my foot in the door, and certainly I think helped. They always talk about the slush pile. Certainly agents have slush piles, but publishers have slush piles too.
Right.
Editors do. And I think having an agent, one who had a relationship with my editor, helped, move my manuscript up a little bit in the slush pile so that he read it fairly quickly.
Well, I know some of the big traditional publishing houses, they have small subsidiary companies. And oftentimes you can go through the small subsidiary companies and submit your book. So, it's I'm working with another company, by the way. Recently, I'm working with Workman Publishing Group, and they have Eloquent, I think it is, publishing as well. And there's quite a few that they have. So, that's why we're saying there's so many levels to traditional publishing today. And that's why it's really not, there's differences in the sense that, like, I know, let's just talk about the advantage. Well, first of all, what is the advantage do you feel of having a traditional publisher, Amanda?
A couple of advantages, I think, or at least differences over indie publishing, that I didn't have to put any money out up front to get the book. So I didn't have to pay for an editor. I didn't have to pay for a cover designer. All of that was done in-house.
Okay.
And so, I think as you're considering what publishing route you want to go through, that's a consideration.
And actually, that's a big consideration, because I think the biggest hurdle most self-published authors have to go through is the editing process, because it can be expensive.
Yes.
And find a good editor. To find a good editor is not always that easy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
Yeah, and Keri, what was it like for you?
So, I would say it's very similar to what Amanda was talking about. There's no money up front. One of the other things, though, that my publisher did was she got the beta readers for the book to kind of see how it was going to play out and what people would think about it. And so that was something that I didn't have to do. And as a self-published author, I think that you would have to do that. And she's also been helping me. She's been sending it to a lot of places for contest entries and things like that. And so she's done a little bit of the push and a little bit of that end of the marketing of the book. But mostly I've been having to do a lot of the leg work for the marketing.
And for you, Amanda, the same?
Yeah, I often heard, especially before I was published, that it's the same whether you're self-published or traditionally published, that you have to do all the marketing and publicity yourself. And while I definitely have felt swamped with all of the marketing and publicity that I'm doing myself, I do feel like Kensington offered some good help with that. I do have a publicist with Kensington that I work with, and she's been very wonderful. Like with Keri, they submitted the book to contests, to reviewers like Booklist and Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, that may take independently published books, but there's a fee associated with that you have to pay for them to review.
Right.
So that's been helpful. Kensington has put advertisements in magazines. My book was, or actually currently is, the Southern Lady Journal their book club pick of the month of June. So
okay.
that was something that
Cool.
they did for me. And then a book subscription box, Once Upon a Book Club, also picked the book for May. And so the book was sent in this super cute little subscription box to, I think, 1,400 readers.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and that I think is something that I would have really struggled as an independent author to have had access to. So I do think that Kensington in that way has really helped the distribution piece of it.
And Keri had mentioned beta readers. Did they send your book out to beta readers?
They did not. Certainly, of course, my editor read it, and then the cover designer read the book. But by the time they acquired it, I think they had a sense, my editor had a sense of where it fit in the market.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, how hard was it for you to get an agent?
Quite hard. I spent years trying to get an agent and constantly improving the book. I had, on 2 separate occasions, agents read the manuscript and say, well, I like this. Can you think about making some of these changes and then resubmit to me? And so I did that, like I said, with 2 different agents that ultimately passed on the manuscript. But ultimately, I think that's what made the book what it is today, getting that feedback from them. And then finally, when I did meet my agent at the Las Vegas Writers Conference, it was in a place that he was ready to say, yes, I like this, let's take it on.
How did you approach getting your agent when you met them at the Las Vegas Writer Conference?
Yes.
So did you have something?
I had a formal pitch appointment with my agent, which is something that most writers' conferences will provide, and certainly that will be at least in the details of the conference. And so I think if you're looking to meet an agent, that's a great way to do it. Again, I think you got to think about that slush pile. And, I pitched to my agent at the conference and he requested 25 pages. And I actually walked away disappointed from the pitch. I thought, oh, he doesn't like me. He doesn't like my story. But ultimately, these agents, they're getting dozens of pitches.
Right, yeah.
They're going to dozens of conferences. They're getting hundreds and hundreds, well, thousands, really, of queries. And so it's maybe you'll be that one in, I don't know, a million person that will sit down with an agent and they'll be like, I love you. Let me sign you right now. But what I think pitching does in person is it gets you to the top of their slush pile so that when I did go back the next week and email him my manuscript, and I said, hey, I pitched you at the Las Vegas Writers Conference, he looked at it right away instead of tucking it away for maybe 6 months, because sometimes you are waiting that long. Right. And that helped. But then it's just a fit. It's a question of, do they like your manuscript? Not like, do they love your manuscript and do they really want to work with you? My agent said, after he said, yes, I'd love to represent you, he said, I just want to let you know that I only sell about 50 to 60% of my first time authors. Wow. Yeah. And I don't think that that's him in particular. I think that, you just imagine like, I'll get an agent and then it's uphill sailing, or that's not the right word. Downhill sailing.
That would be
from here, right? But that's not the case. You still have to go on submission to the publishers.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very crowded market.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't sell their first work.
Yeah, I've done pitching for motion picture scripts. I did that in LA. And I can see that it sounds like, from what you're telling me, it's pretty much the same way. You get your people from the studios there. There, though, they have what you get in line, and you go to this board. You rush to the board, and you have to have some idea who the agent is you might want to pitch to in advance. And then whoever puts the first 8 or 12 names up there, or at least the one I went to, if it's full, then you have to go and try and find someone else. So you better have different companies in mind, and you better know if they're interested in science fiction or whatever it is you're pitching. And then at that point, you wait, and then they call you based on where you signed the board.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't, obviously it's a little different than what you did.
At the San Francisco Writers Conference, it was similar. They would they had a room with all of the agents that were accepting queries, and you needed to research in advance to know who might take your genre. And then it was sort of like, I don't know, just like opening these cattle gates, and everyone
that's exactly
rushes
what it's like.
in
Yeah, that's
to get
exactly
in
what
line.
it's like.
And they had a bell, and 2 minutes. You had 2 minutes with whoever you were pitching to, and then bell. You had to go.
Yep, to the next one.
Yes.
And you start all over with the pitch, and you're thinking, where did I leave off? You're trying to get your thoughts back.
Right, and it's
really tough. Yeah, and it is like. I consider it like shopping, when on what is that called, Black Friday, when they open everything and the doors open and everyone runs in. Yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah. Did you ever do anything like that, Keri?
I did. So I've done several pitches to publishers, and I never really wanted to go the agent way. I don't know. Can't say why, but I just never really decided to do the agent way. So I would just pitch directly to publishers. And I've never had that experience though, where the cow gates open and you rush. I've never had that. That actually sounds kind of fun.
Well, I think that the way Amanda went about finding an agent's very important, because I have had 2 or 3 agents in the past, but I didn't go about it the way you did, and I really wished I had. They used to have the books you could go to in the library.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go online and do it today. And you could go through the books and you would try and find agents based on, your genre.
Yeah.
And it's no different in book format than it is on the internet. You still don't know who you're talking to. And if it says they have 300 clients or had 100 clients, and they're always going to say they had a movie sell, and they may have. But the problem is that what I didn't know, because I was young at the time, a lot younger anyway. And so what would happen is I would write them and they were interested, and then they'd say, oh yeah, we're really interested in what you have, the only thing we require is you send us X amount of dollars so we can cover this and cover that. And you're thinking, well, that sounds reasonable. But I've learned the hard way, if you have to pay an agent in advance, you don't want that agent.
Yeah.
Because think about it. If they have 300 people paying them $300 or $400, that's their living. And you really don't want that.
No.
I also had an agent who was, I guess you could say, a little bit pompous, maybe. But he just thought, he thought he was really important. And we had a deal. We had, I had a movie thing I had been working on for someone else. They needed a barge. I knew someone who had a barge. And because of that, the producer was interested. He wanted to read my book. We talked about my book, my first novel that ever came out. And when my agent finally got around to, after all that nonsense was gone away with the movie, it was actually for The General's Daughter with John Travolta. And so when that had gone away, I had called him and asked him, are you still interested in, my book, to possibly make it into a movie? And he said, yes. Who's your agent? My agent was there. I put my agent on the phone with him, and they were talking, and he said, I really like the book. I'd like to slate this for like the 6th project down the road. And then my agent said, that's not good enough. And my jaw dropped, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, what's he doing? And basically, he pretty much put us in a position to where they didn't want to talk to us anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you start thinking you're so important that they're going to push other projects aside, you're going to lose them. And that's one of the things. I have taken some script writing courses with Hal Crossman, and he really goes over that too, that when you're pitching something, you don't want to lose sight of who they are and who you are. And in reality, we're nobody at that point. We're just someone pitching some work we have. And you kind of just want to sit there and let them talk, tell them about your book, see what their responses are, and then, don't tell them what you want. Don't make demands like, I want to make sure I know who the star is going to be. I want to mean, you don't do that. You listen to what they have to say, or you will lose them. And it's really no different with a book. You go, you pitch your work, you let them ask you questions. I assume that's what you did.
Yes. Yeah. You just deliver a short little, probably very similar to pitching a publisher. You have a short little, kind of like an elevator speech, and then wait for them to ask questions.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but I'm just curious, because I know, Keri, you didn't use an agent and you found a publisher.
Yes.
Did you feel like you wouldn't be able to do this unless you had a manager or an agent?
I think, how do I say this? So I have a pretty good personal relationship with my publisher, and I feel like she's really taking care of me. But I think sometimes if I had an agent, I wouldn't feel so alone sometimes, and I think that having an agent would help with marketing, I would think, and that aspect. And it's always nice to be able to talk to somebody about, about current projects and about upcoming projects and things like that. And so I would think in that sense, a manager would be really handy. I mean, an agent would be really handy to have. Yeah, I don't know. I just always went the route of just talking to the publisher directly. But that's something that I really think is very important too. When you go to talk to a publisher or an agent, you really have to do your research and find out what kind of books they're publishing and if your book fits in that genre, because you don't want to waste their time and you don't want to waste your time if they just don't publish those kinds of books. And yeah, it's an elevator speech, and then you have to be prepared. My publisher asked me, what kind of marketing techniques do you want to use and what kind of social media presence I have. And so those were some really important questions that I had prepared ahead of time.
And I do think that's a big difference between traditionally published or someone helping you publish as opposed to self-published as well. They always want to know, what is your platform? Because I've run into that as well. What's your platform? And you better be able to say something, or at least have an idea of what you want to do. It's interesting because I think Fred Rayworth, Amanda, and I have to tell you, he's a funny character. He was on the show and we were talking about finding an agent or finding a publisher, and he was dead set that he would not publish unless he had a traditional publisher. 367 rejections later, and I kid you not.
He is so tenacious. He just stuck with it. Yeah.
Because most people would give up after 7 or 8 or 17 or 27, but 367. I mean, that's pretty amazing when you think about it, that he went through that much trouble. He's, I'm not going to publish unless I have a traditional publisher. So, you never give up. Keep going, you know. Although self-publishing is not all that bad. But I will tell you this. It's very difficult as a self-published author to get the kind of recognition that someone has, that has a little bit of, I call it storefront, as far as presence goes. There are a few exceptions. We've always talked about Amanda Hawking. She's an exception. There's lots of them out there. Actually, what is interesting, I will take that back a little bit. If you go to Google and look up the top-selling 100 authors, I think it was for 2016. And believe it or not, on Amazon, 53 of those were self-published. So it is shifting a little bit. But there again, I bet if you go and research those 53, they probably did have some kind of platform. They had some idea how they were going to market this. And, they followed some format. They didn't just publish the book and think, I'm going to sell 1 million copies. Because that does not happen.
Right. And I definitely think that we continue to move toward, a book selling environment that definitely, I don't know if it favors, but is good for self-publishing. But I think it also depends a little bit on what you write. And certain genres, like romance, for example, they can do very well self-publishing. That's just, there's a lot of acceptance out there for that. They're able to find readers really well. While some of the other genres, it's still a little bit more challenging to find readers and get in front of readers, I should say, self-publishing. So I think that depends a little bit on what you write, and if you are considering both options, you want to research that a little bit and see what the market is like or the environment is like for your genre.
And one thing you have to think about is distribution too. When you're self-published, you've got to learn how am I going to get my book into Barnes and Noble? You've got to figure that out. Whereas if you go with a traditional publisher, they have an outlet already. They've already, made that establishment with those companies. So it's a little easier to get your book in the store and get a book signing. Have you done any book signings yet, Amanda, here at any of the Barnes and Nobles?
Not here in town. I've done some signings, at independent bookstores here in town, and then also in Colorado where I grew up.
Okay.
I'm planning on visiting a Barnes and Noble, doing a signing in Salt Lake in July or August.
Okay. And what about for you, Keri?
Cool. So I've just done some book signings in the library here in Kingman, and then there are 2 used bookstores here, and I haven't contacted them yet. But I did a book signing in Wyoming, believe it or not, at the Wyoming Writers Conference, because I lived there before I moved back to Arizona, and so I knew a lot of people there, and so I went up there to do a little tour. And then I'm doing a book fair and a book signing in Payson coming up in July, in the middle of July, at the Payson Book Fair.
Well, one of the things I found, I will tell you this, I did represent an author who we did get her into, I would say, and I'm not kidding, probably at least 40 Barnes & Nobles across the United States. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And one of the things I learned, you should already have this established, as long as you have your ISBN, which, Amanda, your book is beautiful. It really is. I just love the way it was printed. And I don't mean just the cover. I just love the texture of it, the way they did everything. But with that book, you're already set up to go into any Barnes & Nobles. And the thing is all they do is they just go on the computer to see if you're established with a 55% markup and returnable. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you are, because otherwise I can't imagine anyone putting that book out there for you. So you can just call almost any Barnes & Nobles and get a signing probably. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and the same way with you, Keri, if you've got your ISBN on the back, and you know, are you distributing? Do you know if she distributes through Ingram or Baker and Taylor, or?
I don't know that actually. I do know that I am in Barnes & Noble in Fort Collins. We haven't arranged a signing there yet, but that's in the works. And then I publish through Lulu, so it is mostly print on demand. So, and I have some books that I've been selling personally as well. So, but I don't think she's gone through those distributors, or if she has, I haven't heard about it yet. So my book is still really new. It was just published this year.
Uh-huh. Amanda's just came out too.
Yeah.
Did it also?
2 months. And I think
I was looking at your book too, Amanda, on Amazon. It looks beautiful. I love that image in the front.
You.
It's gorgeous.
Well, you know, my personal experience is that you have to. I used to just I set aside 2 hours, 2 or 3 times a week, just calling across the U.S. close to where this woman lived, to try and get her in the stores. And the other thing I did, in addition to that, because I'm assuming, and that just is an assumption with both Amanda and Keri, with both of you, that when you are on the road, you're paying for that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, here's my advice to you. And if you stick to this plan, it really does work. Every time I signed her up for a Barnes & Nobles, it usually was on a Saturday. They like to do Saturday signings. I would either sign her up on a Friday with an independent store in the same city, or on a Sunday with an independent store in the same city. And the reason is your independent stores usually only ask for a 40% markup, and they typically pay you at the end of the day. Like if you sold 10 books, they write you a check or pay you for those 10 books. So you've got money in your pocket. You're not going to wait 3 months, because if you go through a distributor, you're going to be waiting at least 3 months probably to see a check. So it keeps you going.
Yeah.
And she was doing signings every weekend. And, if you have a route, I always tell people, it's like being a mailman. Have a route. If you're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you may want to do Bartlesville, then Skiatook, or, make sure you're going within an area that's just a few miles up the road, so you can cover an entire area or region, really. And then, work your way into Kansas, go across Missouri, but do it in some kind of a route type situation, so you're not spinning your wheels and wasting your time. And plus, if you're on the road and you can be on the road for 2 weeks, you could probably hit 2 or 3 cities that way. And if you did the independent stores along the way, typically they will also let you do signings during the week as well. So you could even do one on a Wednesday.
Right. More flexibility that way.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that way you can have money to go on the road. For a lot of people, or for some people, I guess money's not the option, or not the isn't a concern. But the thing is that you do have to be practical. That what's the point of having the book out there if you're not making money with it? I would assume, the goal is to
be a sustainable artist, and at some point that requires, you to be able to feed yourself.
Right. Yeah, and then for me too, it's like there's a message in my book, and I really want to get that message out, about follow your dreams and don't worry about, there's going to be bumps in the road, but you can conquer them, that kind of thing. And so for me, too, it's not just about selling books, but it's about getting that message out and trying to get a readership.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I was talking to Amanda Keri before we went on air, and I have a new book that just came out this week called The Purple Caterpillar. And to be honest with you, I have not put together a marketing strategy yet. She's holding it up for the video audience. But, I need to work on that this next week. I'm going to have to be working on how am I going to market this now. We have it out there. Right now, my only marketing strategy is I create these little postcards. So wherever I go to eat or I go to the grocery store, I'll say, oh, you have children? And if they say yes, I go, oh, I've got a new book for you. It actually is interesting how that's working already.
Yeah.
And, we haven't done any advertisement, and in 3 days we sold almost 70 books now.
Oh, wow.
So, there are ways of going out there. I mean, we can't just do that. We are going to have to put together some kind of marketing strategy here. I will get around to it. But, so we all, I'm in the same shoes everyone else is. And I will tell you this, as an author, it's easy for me to talk about this on the radio because this is what I do. Mm-hmm. And I have authors on from every walk of life who have written in every genre possible. And I listen to what they say. But when it's your turn to do it, it's a different story. Mm-hmm. First of all, you're trying to remember, what did they do? How did they do that? And you're trying to think back. I actually go back and listen to shows if I know someone did something interesting to see what they did. So I have to take the same advice that everyone else does because I'm no different than anyone else. It's just the advantage I have is I get to talk to a lot of people about it. And it's scary.
Yeah.
It really is scary. And that's the other side of this. I can talk on the radio all day long. But when it comes to a book signing, you really have to work yourself into that and say, you got to go out there and do this, and you got to tell people, have you seen my book? So I'm no different than anyone else.
And I think I don't think that all authors are introverts, but I think a good number of us are introverts, and so that's difficult to go out and be that salesperson. It's a little bit.
It's the part we don't.
Nature.
Yeah, and it's the part that no one really talks about too much. If you sign with a traditional publisher, you're probably thinking they're going to send me out on the road. They're going to set up these signings, and the reality of it is, even with the bigger publishers today, if you're just starting with them, you're not probably going to get that PR person to go out there and do all this for you. When I started out, I happened to be lucky when I was here in Las Vegas, when my book came out with the Emblem in 1995, in that someone did hook me up with a good publicist. And, she was valuable in the sense that I didn't know how to go about selling my book, to be honest with you. I hadn't thought that part through. I did have a few stores in California. That's how I ended up back here in Las Vegas. I did go and do some signings there and stop through Vegas on the way. And this publicist was great. She introduced me to a couple of well-known authors. And actually, one of them was Stephen J. Cannell. He's the one who used to produce 21 Jump Street on television. He had like 42 shows on TV.
Oh, wow.
But he was a novelist, and he had a few novels out, and he was no different than us in that he told me, he says, James, I have all these shows on TV, but no one knows who I am as an author. And so when I go out there, I have to find ways to get people's attention because he wasn't Anne Rice, he wasn't Grisham or Clancy. So he had to come up with a way to get people to come into the store so he could introduce himself as an author and sell his book. So he did lectures, and he says, James, I'm going to be doing a lecture today. You can see what I do 1 hour before I do the signing and give you an idea. And I actually came up with a series of lectures called Aspects of Writing. Back in 1996. And I actually, every month, would go into that store for a year and a half. I lectured on self-publishing. And it works. People, if you can come up with something, a gimmick that will, bring people, if you can talk about something other than just your book that they might be interested in. Now, I know that there's a Barnes & Nobles here, and I've actually had a group of people from the stores on. We did a show on that, on what do they expect from their authors? And they kind of were in agreement that they didn't like people who came in and did lectures before the signing. And they said, unless it's something really interesting, and we talked about what I did, and they said, yeah, but self-publishing is different. People want to publish, so they're going to be curious about what you're doing because they want to publish. So trying to find, sometimes readings don't even work. Yeah. So trying to find what will fit and what will work is very important when you're out there trying to pitch that story. Other than just going there and sitting there and just doing the signing.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And from my limited experience so far with the book, I prefer those events where I am at least doing a reading or doing a class of some sort, because I want to feel like I'm giving something back to the people who are there who've spent some of their time to come and listen to me. And even, I'm happy to talk with them, to answer questions, anything like that, regardless of whether or not they end up buying the book. I'm kind of happy to be having that interaction again. That way, again, I'm not trying to be a salesperson. I'm simply trying to kind of create awareness. And that's a much more authentic way to do that, as opposed to just sitting at a little table with a pile of books and hoping that people stop by and are like, oh, this looks interesting.
So what we're talking about, and what we're talking about now is exactly like self-publishing. So there's the traditional publisher who can do so much for you, and then there's that line where you have to cross over and now start being, the salesperson.
Yeah.
And that's where there are a lot of similarities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you do have to be creative on that end. One of the things I found, and Amanda, I don't know if you're doing it, because I've only been to one of your events, which was your launching, which was very successful, really nice.
I learned from a great teacher about about book launches. James Kelly has a great class on that, and I imagine a great radio show on that.
Yeah, we've talked about it several times, and it really works. I'm working with someone now. In fact, his book just launched. His name is Christopher Spada, and he's on Indiegogo. So, and it's called America Fight Back in the Corruption. And so that just went on Indiegogo. And what I've helped a lot of authors, not a lot, but I've helped quite a few authors who will go out there. Some of them, it's not even about having or needing the money. It's about the exposure. Amanda, you talked about when you were on my show, we talked about grant funding, and then we also talked about crowdfunding. Yeah. And they both can work hand in hand, because you've helped authors get money as well through grant writing.
We've certainly talked. I've worked with authors to do grants that help them attend conferences and workshops. Yeah. So essentially, that's money. That's money that you can go and get some writing education out without having to necessarily pay
out of your pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And then when it comes to crowdfunding, oftentimes the hardest thing as a self-publisher, which is different than what Keri, you, and Amanda have gone through, is they did have to put the money out of their pocket for the editing and for the proofing, for the typesetting, for the printing of it itself. So that's where there's a big difference between traditional and self-publishing. So we've actually helped people get money through crowdfunding, to help at least with that portion of what they have to go through. But I will tell you the greatest thing out of that happens, and it's really no different than what you did for yours, Amanda, when you did your book launching, is inviting family and friends and getting people interested in buying that book in advance, so they'll come to that event and they want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times psychologically we think, oh well, gosh, but I'm asking for money, they're helping me, and I feel bad. But the reality of it is, all they're doing is they're just pre-purchasing the book. So they're getting something for it. It's really not they're not, well, they are, but they're being rewarded for that gift. They're getting something in return. It's called an incentive. And even if they're paying for the cocktail party, they'll say, well, yeah, but they're paying for the help and pay for the cocktail party too. Yes, but they're going there and they're enjoying the hors d'oeuvres too.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and I think you have to think of it in that way and don't be afraid. So you're really a salesman even on that end of it,
Yeah.
So, there's that part of it that's different. We talked about distribution and the distributing of it. What I really found, I got to back up a bit though, because I'm just curious. You had mentioned, Keri, that when you were growing up in high school, you mentioned you were in Sweden as well. How did you go from the U.S. to Sweden and then back?
So I was I was an exchange student.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was 36 hours on a plane and with my violin, I should say, in my suitcases to live there for a year. And yeah, it was through an organization. It was really it changed my life. It really did. It made me look at the world in a totally different way.
Where did you go in Sweden?
I went to a little town called Fagersta, and it was 90 miles or 90 kilometers. Let's see. I have to get my directions right. Southwest of Stockholm.
Okay. It sounds fun.
It sounds lovely. Yeah. What an adventure.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing.
And you always end up back in Arizona.
I've always ended back in Arizona. That just seems to be the case. So I'm back in Arizona now after being in Wyoming for almost 20 years.
Wow.
And yeah, so Wyoming kind of feels like my second home, but Arizona is my first home and probably always will be.
So do you think that from the travel that there's inspiration to add that to any books in the future?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the next book that I'm working on, which is a sequel to Nothing But a Song, she actually travels to Sweden to do some touring.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's fun because I do get to rely a little bit on my experience from being in Sweden. And I've been telling my husband I need to go to Sweden and do some more research.
Of course. So Amanda, has your travels ever made it? Did any of your travels make it into your book, or?
A little bit. The book is set in the upper Midwest, Wisconsin and Minnesota, places I had visited before I wrote the book, but then places I also visited after, or I should say while I was writing the book, to kind of to get a feel for what the nature was like there. I went, for example, to downtown St. Paul and was trying to imagine what it would have been like in 1906. And okay, this building was here, but this building was gone and used to be this. But it's really, really fun to get to walk kind of in your character's shoes and get a sense, a sense of distance and a sense of just, the smells and the sights,
right.
The sounds, all of that. Even 120 years later, there's still something quite unique about going to the place that you're writing about. My next book is set in New Orleans, and I also went to New Orleans as I was researching, again, to get a feel of the city and what it was like to walk across it and to walk toward the river and all of that kind of sensory stuff that you might not fully be able to appreciate when you haven't been there.
Yeah, and I do that as well. In my books, I always incorporate places I've been. I'm very fortunate that I got to travel when I was younger, and so I've been a lot of places. But I always find it's easier for me when I can think of some place I've been, and it's like you said, even the people, whether it's in Europe or in the South in the U.S. or Northern U.S., there's a difference in people, and so you get to incorporate that into the book as well. And like you said, the smells, the food. I think to me that's probably one of the best lessons in life the greatest things you can do in life is the best education. That's what I've always said. The best education in life is travel, because
absolutely.
You meet people, you learn all about people in different perspectives.
Right, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's always part of what I do. And do you have any questions for me, Amanda? As far as we've talked so many times, when it comes to traditionally published. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Keri, when you were saying that Amanda, you have the agent, and do you find this odd dealing with anything you're doing with your publisher, that you're speaking on your own behalf? Because I know with you're probably your agent handles quite a bit, Amanda.
Yeah, anytime that certainly he handled the initial setup, and then when the contract came through, he looked it over. I looked it over, had some questions that I could then kind of field to him and say, I don't fully understand this. Can you explain this to me? And then a couple of points I wanted to ask them if they would change. And so he did that, made those inquiries to the publisher, which they did not change. But at least he was the one that was asking those questions instead of me, which lets my relationship with my editor just really be about the stories and not about the business.
Right, the details.
Yeah, which has been nice.
Yeah. Keri, and you had to do all that on your own.
I did have to do all that on my own, and dealing with the contract was a little bit nerve-wracking. There were some areas of it that I just didn't quite understand, and luckily I have a lawyer in my family, and so I handed it to him, and he took a look at it, and and I did some research too to find out what the average contract was, and it seemed on the up and up, and I went ahead and signed it. And it helped too that I work with the publisher in editing as well, and so I had a relationship with her beforehand, and so I felt that I could trust her.
Mm-hmm. Well, I find that when it comes to dealing with authors, I think sometimes when you're self-published in particular, it's really hard to understand this business and understand what it takes for publishing. I know someone locally who charges quite a bit to publish, and I always thought, well, he's kind of outrageous price-wise. But you know what I found is that it doesn't matter how much you charge, people are just as demanding, whether it's a little bit or a lot, and they really have no concept. And that's why we do this show too, is I do want people to understand. I spent $30,000 on my first novel, and today you wouldn't need to even go close to that. Even if you self-published, you could do it for a few thousand. But when you don't know what you're doing, I trusted people. I trusted that they were going to do the editing. They said they were going to do graphic artwork. Was the same way. Oh my goodness. Trying to find someone to do the cover and trying to paint a picture. The hardest part is that when you're self-publishing, you've got to paint the picture to someone of what you want on that cover. I do covers, and I actually had someone come to me, and I didn't get it. I'll be honest, I didn't. So sometimes it's hard to convey what you want.
Yeah.
And if someone says, I want this, and you're thinking, okay, so you put something together, and they go, well, that's not really what I was looking for. And as someone who does that as well, it's kind of hard to understand. So, but when you have a traditional publisher, they kind of help you with that. I have a feeling.
I don't know what your experience, Keri, was, but it wasn't that they helped me with the cover. They designed the cover.
Oh, they designed the cover.
This is the cover.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I hope you like it.
Well, I like it.
And I quite like my cover as well. But I think in the beginning, I was what you see as the author and what you're trying to convey from your story is not necessarily the best thing to put on the cover of your book, because the book cover is about marketing. And I that was a big lesson for me. I looked at this cover and I thought, well, this looks a little romancy. It looks a little bit like a book that a woman would buy that a man's not going to pick up and buy. And you think that everyone in the world is going to love your book and want to read it. And I do think my readership definitely extends beyond women. But if you look at who reads fiction, who reads historical fiction, who reads historical fiction that's not set in World War I or World War II, that's women.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense for them to market the book toward women.
Yeah.
But as just as a writer, you don't necessarily know all those pieces.
And when my first novel came out, that one I was uncertain of how am I going to market that one. The second novel that came out, the title was the problem. And it's a science fiction. My second novel is a science fiction, which is soon to be re-released. But when it came out, I titled it Creating God. And what I didn't realize is using that term, some people took that as blasphemy. Some people love the title, and then other people thought this was blasphemy. And we were talking on the last show I did how you really have to find a way to market to as many people as you possibly can. So you don't want to be offensive to some people, and at the same time, you still want to keep your concept there. Well, mine's science fiction, so I thought, you know what, put something out there that sounds science fiction. So now it's titled The Alien Transcripts.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Creating God. So that's will be out very soon. But you do have to be careful with everything, not just the cover, but titles and everything else.
Right.
And Keri, I like your title, but how did you come up with that?
I actually came up with it when I was 14. So it used to be called All I Want's a Song. And
okay.
I didn't like it. I thought it was too long, and then I shortened it to Nothing But a Song. And that was the original, that was the title after that when I was 14. And my publisher, I was really surprised. I thought for sure she'd want to change the title, but she kept it. And the cover, I was given choices. The cover designer, she read my book, and I had no idea what I wanted on the cover. I mean, I thought, well, music and, microphone, and those were the only things I could say, because I really had no idea. And they came up with a bunch of different designs, and they said, which one do you like? And I picked that one.
Okay. It's interesting because when I design covers, especially for my own books, I will have several designs. Mm-hmm. And because it's kind of like doing beta reading, I'll take the designs around with me somewhere, wherever I am, let's say a restaurant, and I'll just put like 2 or 3 designs out there, and I'll just ask someone, which one you like the best? Mm-hmm. And you're getting an honest really opinion.
Funny. Yeah.
Because
I actually did that too. I took my designs with me to Starbucks, and every single barista was like, "So what do you think? Which one do you like?" And they
That's a great
they picked
idea.
that one, which is my cover, and one person picked the other one, which I really didn't like. But
it's very
the majority rule.
Yeah, and that's truly how you can do it. I mean, it really is. I actually have had people in the past tell me, well, I like that, but I think I would change this here. And then I look at them and go, maybe they're right. So it really is good to do that, especially if you're self-published. But it is nice that someone chose. It's interesting that they didn't let you pick anything, though.
They did ask. They said, do you have any ideas? Send us pictures of covers that you like, and sort of images that you would like to see on the cover of the book. And so I sent some. And I did say one thing that was quite important to me, actually, was the book is about the Native American boarding schools. It's set in the Upper Midwest. I said it's very important that if you do put anything related to Native Americans, that it's representative of the Upper Midwest Native Americans, and not pottery from Native Americans in the Southwest. That it just I wanted that to be an authentic piece of it, and they did absolutely take that into consideration when they made the cover.
That's great.
Well, ladies, we're running out of time. So, Jenny, again, where can we find your book? I said Jenny. I meant Keri.
Sorry. Yeah. I was like, who are you talking to? Okay, so my book is available anywhere you can buy books, on Lulu.com, BarnesandNoble.com, it's Amazon.com, and I'm working on the ebook right now too. So.
It's exciting.
Yeah, and you can get it at Barnes & Noble in Fort Collins if you want to go there, but otherwise it's not. That's available online.
Okay, so Keri, the next time I say Jenny, then you're going to answer right. And Amanda, Amanda, where can we find your book?
You can find my book in the same places, certainly on Amazon, your Barnes & Noble store, your local independent bookstore, and several libraries throughout the country have it as well.
Okay, I would like to thank our guests Amanda Skenandore and Keri Dadeo. I always get names wrong. I used to get Amanda's wrong, but I get it right now, right? So to find links to our guest website, please visit aspectsofwriting.com. You can also find links to YouTube, Roku TV, AMFM247.com, which is where this airs, iTunes, and several other outlets. There's 14 terrestrial stations you'll find on that website as well. So just go to aspectsofwriting.com. And there's also, the shows are always archived on aspectsofwriting.com. So until next week, this is your host, James Kelly, reminding you, if you can dream it, you can write it. Thank you, ladies, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.